Have you ever wondered what happens when your own family turns their back on you for following your passion? In this emotional, eye-opening story, I share how my wealthy family disowned me because I chose a career turning recycled materials into beautiful, sustainable furniture, something they called trash. Cast out and stripped of everything, I built my life from scratch, discovering the true meaning of success and self-worth. But the tables turned dramatically when my family's multi-million-dollar automotive empire faced a catastrophic scandal. Suddenly, the daughter they rejected was their only hope. Find out how I went from being humiliated and cast aside to becoming their CEO and ultimately redefining our family legacy forever. If you've ever faced rejection or felt misunderstood, this story is for you. Watch now and see how passion, integrity, and courage can transform broken relationships and build an empire from the ashes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories that prove success isn't always what you expect it to be. The day my family found out my secret was the day I finally became free and lost everything. Growing up in the Sinclair mansion, luxury was everywhere. My bedroom alone was larger than most people's apartments. My wardrobe full of designer labels I hardly knew how to pronounce. But behind all that polished marble and glittering crystal chandeliers was a truth no one ever admitted. We weren't really living. We were performing. My name is Mary Sinclair, and from the moment I learned to talk, my parents already had my entire life scripted. The Sinclair name stood tall, a beacon of success built on prestigious universities, Ivy League diplomas, and multi-million-dollar deals. My father, Robert Sinclair, was the kind of man who could silence an entire boardroom with a single glance. My mother, Eleanor, perfected the art of hosting extravagant parties where conversations revolved around investments, status, and influence. Excellence wasn't merely expected, it was demanded. Yet even as a child, I sensed something wrong. I'd stand quietly beside my parents, nodding politely as they proudly introduced me as the future CEO of Sinclair Auto. But secretly, I envied the gardener pruning roses outside our expansive windows, or the cook who laughed freely in our kitchen. Their lives seemed simple, sincere, and real. I discovered my passion entirely by accident. One rainy afternoon when I was 15, I found myself hiding in the garage, away from the suffocating pressure of my math tutor's constant criticisms. There, amid forgotten stacks of old wood, discarded metal sheets, and boxes of faded fabrics, I experienced a strange spark. I began assembling, hammering, and sanding without really thinking until I realized, astonished, that I'd transformed worthless junk into something genuinely beautiful. From that day forward, my garage became my refuge. Whenever stress threatened to overwhelm me, I'd quietly slip away, losing myself in the process of creation. Hours would pass as I turned broken chair legs into elegant lamps, scraps of metal into sophisticated coffee tables, and weathered wood into artwork that spoke of hidden potential. But my hobby had to remain hidden. I remember clearly the evening my father casually mocked an artist on TV who specialized in sustainable design, sneering that only failures wasted their lives making trash from trash. My mother laughed delicately, nodding along. My brother, Jonathan, a Harvard graduate groomed to take over Sinclair Auto, joined in, dismissing such endeavors as naive distractions from true success. They couldn't understand. And worse, I knew they never would. As I grew older, the secret became heavier, yet harder to abandon. By the time I was 29, I felt split in half. To my family, I was the perfect Sinclair heir. Educated at Yale, holding an MBA I had no real interest in, impeccably poised for corporate leadership. But inside, my heart strained under the weight of living two lives. My art had grown into something I genuinely loved, though I'd concealed it behind an anonymous Instagram account. never daring to let anyone see the face behind my work. I might have continued this charade indefinitely, living safely hidden, if not for one accidental moment, one careless click that changed everything. It was late at night. I was exhausted from pretending at yet another gala honoring my father. Tired and distracted, I'd mistakenly posted one of my pieces on my personal social media account instead of my anonymous one. Within minutes, friends, acquaintances, and even distant family members had seen it. The post went viral overnight, gaining likes, shares, and comments praising its innovative sustainability. Panic clawed at my chest as I watched my secret exposed to the world. It was only a matter of hours before my parents summoned me to explain myself. I walked to my father's office that morning, already knowing the storm waiting for me. Yet, despite the dread pounding in my chest, a strange sense of calm filled me. For the first time, I felt relief that the mask I'd worn for nearly 3 decades was finally about to shatter. Deep down, a quiet voice whispered reassurance. Perhaps losing everything was exactly what I needed. I took a deep breath, opened the heavy oak door, and stepped inside, ready at last to face whatever would come next. I stood silently before my father's grand mahogany desk, heart pounding against my chest like a prisoner trying to escape. The air inside his office was dense with tension. My parents sat stiffly in antique chairs, their faces masks of cold disappointment. Jonathan stood near the window, arms folded, avoiding my gaze altogether. "Sit," my father commanded softly, his voice dangerously calm. I obeyed, sinking into the leather chair. My mother's eyes flicked toward me briefly before darting away, as though looking directly at me might somehow taint her carefully preserved dignity. "Mary," my father began, his voice measured and icy. "Can you explain to us exactly what you've been doing behind our backs?" My throat tightened. "I've been creating furniture and art pieces," I replied quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. "From recycled materials." He leaned forward, eyes piercing mine. "Recycled materials," he repeated slowly, as though each word left a foul taste in his mouth. "You mean trash." I inhaled sharply, feeling the sting of his words but refusing to flinch. "I call it sustainability, turning something discarded into something valuable again." He scoffed, shaking his head slowly. "Valuable? You embarrass this family, Mary. Do you know how much effort we've invested to secure your position as heir to Sinclair Auto? Do you realize how many years of legacy you're carelessly tossing aside for a childish hobby?" I felt a surge of frustration, hot and tight within my chest. "It's not a hobby," I said firmly. "It's my passion, something I've built for myself." My mother sighed loudly, finally speaking up. "Passion doesn't pay bills or maintain our reputation, Mary. You're humiliating all of us." Jonathan finally glanced my way, pity flickering briefly across his eyes, as though I'd become a pathetic stranger. It hurt more than my father's harshness or my mother's disappointment. "Mary," my father said abruptly, reaching into his desk drawer and sliding a crisp white sheet of paper toward me. "If this is your choice, there's no room for you here anymore. You are free to follow your passion, but Sinclair Auto, this family, will no longer support your foolishness." I stared blankly at the document. A formal renouncement of all my inheritance rights, clearly printed in stark black letters. "You're asking me to choose?" My voice was barely a whisper. "No, Mary," my father corrected gently, his tone somehow crueler in its softness. "You've already chosen. This paper just confirms it." I glanced up at him, searching his face for any trace of hesitation, warmth, or regret. There was none. My family had made their decision. The years I'd spent trying to please them, bending my life to their expectations, suddenly seemed laughably pointless. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for the pen placed carefully beside the document. I hesitated for only a brief moment before my resolve hardened. If signing this paper meant finally being honest with myself, then the price was worth paying. The ink felt surprisingly heavy as I signed my name, each stroke confirming the loss of everything I'd known. When I set the pen down, silence filled the room. My mother looked away, her posture rigid, while Jonathan stared blankly at the floor. My father gathered the document calmly, tucking it away as if filing away an inconvenient chapter in our family's history. "You may leave," he said simply, turning his attention back to the paperwork on his desk, effectively erasing me from existence. I stood slowly, realizing that this was truly goodbye, not just to wealth or privilege, but to the illusion I'd called family. The strange weightlessness that settled in my chest as I walked out of the mansion felt nothing like defeat. Instead, it felt a lot like freedom. Stepping out onto the street from the mansion gates felt like stepping into another world entirely. For 29 years, my life had been sheltered behind iron fences, grand parties, and the comfortable numbness of privilege. Now, standing alone on a crowded sidewalk with nothing but a single suitcase and a debit card soon to be worthless, reality hit me hard. I took a taxi straight to my small studio on the outskirts of the city. The place was tiny, just a renovated warehouse space I'd rented secretly months ago, but stepping through that rusty metal door felt like entering a haven. It smelled of paint, polished wood, and something wonderfully earthy. Home, I thought quietly. Truly home. The first few days were harder than I'd ever anticipated. I quickly realized how utterly unprepared I was to live without the safety net of the Sinclair fortune. My father wasted no time cutting off my accounts. Within days, my bank card was declined, leaving me staring at an empty fridge and overdue electricity bills. But despite the initial shock of poverty, I felt oddly liberated. Breakfast was no longer a gourmet meal served on fine porcelain, but a simple bowl of oatmeal eaten while sitting cross-legged on the workshop floor. Luxurious evening gowns gave way to paint-stained jeans and worn-out hoodies. Everything I owned suddenly seemed excessive, pointless, and oddly embarrassing. Money was tight, painfully so. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, anxiety tightening in my chest. I wasn't afraid of losing comfort. It was the fear of failing myself that haunted me most. Doubts crept in quietly. Had I been too impulsive? Was following my passion a reckless fantasy born from privilege I no longer possessed? Yet even in moments of uncertainty, I knew in my bones that I'd chosen correctly. Each morning, despite exhaustion, I woke feeling genuinely eager to start working. Without the shadow of family expectations looming over me, creativity flowed with newfound freedom. For the first time, I was creating not to escape, but to truly live. To keep myself afloat, I began selling smaller pieces online. Every sale, no matter how modest, was like a tiny burst of validation. Still, I couldn't deny the harshness of my new reality. Some nights, I curled up beneath thin blankets, chilled and discouraged, wondering if my art was enough, if I was enough. One afternoon, sitting alone in the workshop, sunlight filtering through dusty windows, I felt a sudden wave of clarity. I glanced around at the mismatched furniture, half-finished projects, and scattered tools. For the first time, my life wasn't polished or perfect, yet it felt remarkably authentic. I was building something entirely mine, an imperfect yet sincere reflection of who I truly was. In that quiet moment, I realized freedom wasn't about escaping the past. It was about owning my choices fully. Poverty might pinch, anxiety might creep, but at least they were mine. The pressure I'd carried my entire life began to lift, replaced by a steady determination to succeed not in the eyes of my family, but in my own heart. As I sanded down an old wooden desk salvaged from a dumpster, transforming it into something elegant and purposeful, I felt genuine pride. This simple act felt far more meaningful than any degree or corporate title I'd ever chased. My fingers ran smoothly along the grain, absorbing its imperfections, its history. "Just like me," I whispered softly, smiling slightly at the realization. Yes, the journey ahead was uncertain. Yes, it was daunting. But finally, after 29 years, I understood one fundamental truth. I was no longer performing a role. I was simply and beautifully myself. A soft ping from my phone pulled me out of deep concentration. Dusting off my hands, I reached across the work table, surprised to see a notification from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey Mary, congrats on the article! I had no idea you were behind Reclaimed Grace. Amazing work!" My stomach flipped strangely. "Article? What article?" I whispered aloud, confusion quickly melting into unease. Swiping rapidly through my phone, I tapped open my Instagram account. Overnight, it seemed I'd gained hundreds of new followers, along with a flood of enthusiastic comments under my latest posts. My pulse quickened, fingertips trembling slightly as I opened the link someone had shared in the comments. It led me straight to an article on a popular design blog called Urban Green. Bold black letters announced, "Mary Sinclair, the woman turning waste into beautiful art." The room blurred slightly as I scanned the lines, heart thudding faster with each word. The article was glowing, calling my designs a fresh, authentic take on sustainability, praising my style for its simple elegance and meaningful innovation. They even included several photos I'd previously posted anonymously: online rustic tables fashioned from industrial pallets, lamps made from salvaged metal, cabinets brought back to life from weathered wood. My anonymity was shattered completely now. They'd connected my Instagram handle directly to my real name, spotlighting me as not just an artist, but as the daughter of Robert Sinclair, an heiress boldly redefining success. I sank slowly into a nearby chair, dizzy with disbelief. Excitement warred with anxiety, joy tangled with fear. I'd dreamed of recognition, but never expected exposure this sudden or public. More notifications continued pouring in: messages, follows, likes, until I finally turned the phone face down, unable to process it all at once. Over the following days, the attention continued growing, becoming impossible to ignore. Orders filled my inbox faster than I could read them. Major lifestyle and art magazines reached out, wanting interviews. Television producers invited me onto their shows. Suddenly, my simple warehouse studio felt far too small, and my life too chaotic to comprehend. But underneath the thrill was something deeper, something far more meaningful than mere popularity. Every positive comment, every interview request was a subtle affirmation that my path, though difficult and uncertain, had value. For the first time, I realized clearly that success was not about impressing my parents or proving my worth to someone else. Success meant being seen for who I genuinely was, flaws, passions, and all. Yet, even amidst this surreal spotlight, a part of me still hesitated. Anxiety whispered harshly in quiet moments, reminding me of past rejections. "They'll see through you eventually," it hissed. "You're not really an artist, you're just someone pretending." The turning point came unexpectedly one afternoon when I received an email from a complete stranger named Hannah. She had bought one of my early tables back when I first opened the workshop online. Her message was short but unforgettable. "Dear Mary, I just wanted you to know that your table is more than furniture to me. It reminds me every day that beauty can come from the most broken places. Your courage inspired me to pursue my own passion again. Thank you." Sitting quietly at my workbench, tears blurred my vision. Hannah's simple note touched something deep within me, reinforcing the idea that my art was truly meaningful, not because of its popularity, but because it genuinely touched others. I wasn't an imposter or a fraud. I was simply human, imperfectly yet sincerely offering something real to the world. From that moment, I embraced the attention with more confidence. Yes, I still feared criticism, doubted myself at times, and felt overwhelmed by sudden success. But more powerful than those fears was the undeniable truth I'd discovered. I deserved to be here, exactly where I was, sharing what I loved. Days turned into weeks, and soon my life resembled a whirlwind. I expanded the workshop, hired a small team of local artisans, and accepted invitations to speak at sustainability conferences across the country. Every speech, every article, every piece created felt like further proof that I'd made the right choice, even if that choice had come at the cost of losing the family I'd once known. But then one evening, returning home after a long day of interviews, a different kind of message arrived and that froze me in place. "Mary, it's Jonathan. Sinclair Auto is in trouble. Badly. Dad won't admit it, but we need your help. Please call me." The sudden weight of my past slammed back into my chest. My newfound strength faltered briefly. Memories surged unbidden. My father's stern rejection, Jonathan's cold pity, my mother's distant silence. Could I really face all that again, even from this new position of strength? Taking a deep breath, I slowly placed the phone back down. That message changed everything, stirring uncertainties I thought I'd buried long ago. But even as fear crept back, something within me stirred with quiet resolve. This time, I wasn't the daughter desperate for approval. I was a woman who'd built herself from scratch. My family had taught me that success meant wealth, power, and prestige. But I'd learned the truth on my own. Real success meant having the strength to face your past without losing yourself. And that's exactly what I intended to do next. The news broke on a rainy Thursday morning, splashed boldly across every screen and headline I saw. I stood in line at the local cafe, staring at the TV mounted above the espresso machine, feeling as though the world had suddenly tipped sideways. Sinclair Auto faces major fraud scandal over emissions manipulation, the anchor declared solemnly, her voice calm and professional despite the explosive content. My heart sank like a stone, breath catching sharply in my throat. Images flashed across the screen. My father exiting a courthouse, Jonathan standing stiffly behind him, microphones shoved mercilessly toward their pale faces. I hurriedly left the cafe, rain dampening my hair as I walked numbly back to the studio. Headlines swirled in my mind, each harsher than the last. Words like fraud, betrayal, and lawsuit echoed painfully, digging deep into the carefully buried wounds of my past. It was difficult to process my family, the proud, invincible Sinclairs, reduced to this chaotic spectacle. As soon as I entered the workshop, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Text messages piled up from numbers I'd nearly forgotten. Extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years now reached out, desperately searching for answers or help. Then came the call I'd dreaded most. My phone screen lit up, illuminating the name Jonathan. I hesitated for just a breath before accepting. "Mary." Jonathan's voice cracked immediately, stripped of its usual detached confidence. It was unsettling. I don't know where else to turn. You saw the news?" "Yes," I whispered, fighting to steady my voice. "How bad is it?" "Worse than the media knows yet. Dad's been covering it up for years. Falsified emissions tests, bribed inspectors, everything. Investors are fleeing. Stock prices have plummeted." He paused, clearly struggling. "Mary, we're finished if we don't get help." Silence stretched between us painfully. Years of resentment swirled within me, mixing harshly with an unexpected pang of sympathy. "Why me?" I finally asked quietly. "Why ask me now, after everything?" "Because you're the only Sinclair left who's untouched by scandal," Jonathan admitted bitterly. "The media loves you. Your sustainability brand, it's everything we're not. You could help us. The board would listen to you. Investors would trust you." I laughed dryly, bitterness rising sharply. "So that's it? The family disgrace is suddenly the family savior?" "Mary, please." Jonathan's voice shook with genuine desperation. "You're our last chance." "I need time," I whispered, hanging up before he could reply. My hands trembled slightly, gripping the phone tightly. Emotions surged, raw and conflicted. Part of me wanted to turn away completely, reveling in the justice of their downfall. Another part, a deeper, quieter part, ached at seeing them suffer. That night, sleep eluded me entirely. I paced restlessly around the studio, haunted by childhood memories I'd fought hard to forget. I remembered clearly the nights I'd heard my father's cold laughter drifting up from the study below, dismissing ethical concerns from executives as mere nuisances. I recalled Jonathan's distant pity when I'd left, convinced that my future was a pathetic mistake. Now, the very qualities they'd mocked, honesty, integrity, authenticity, had become their lifeline. Yet despite the irony, I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sadness. Early the next morning, Jonathan texted again, desperation coloring his words even more clearly. "Dad won't ask you himself. He's too proud. But Mary, he's breaking. Mom too. Just think about it. Please." The weight of his plea pressed heavily upon my shoulders. I knew exactly how much it must have cost him to write those words. They were Sinclair's, after all. Pride was their lifeblood. Standing quietly by my workbench, I ran my fingertips lightly along the smooth surface of the reclaimed oak table I'd just finished. It reminded me vividly of everything I'd built from nothing, without deceit, manipulation, or shortcuts. Could I truly risk tainting my own integrity by stepping back into their world? But then a gentle thought crept into my mind. Perhaps this wasn't about revenge, pride, or even reconciliation. Perhaps it was simply about doing what was right, not because they deserved it, but because it aligned with the person I'd become. Taking a deep breath, I carefully set down my phone, heart steadying slowly. I hadn't forgiven them, not entirely, but turning my back completely felt wrong too. My family's empire might have been built on corruption, but maybe, just maybe, there was still time to reshape it into something better. At that moment, clarity settled over me gently, silencing the storm inside my mind. If I stepped back into their world, it wouldn't be to save them, it would be to change them, to force them to confront their past as I'd confronted mine, to show them that integrity wasn't weakness, it was strength. My fingers moved quickly, sending Jonathan a short, decisive reply. "Tell Dad I'll meet with him, but this time I'm not coming back as a Sinclair, I'm coming back as myself." I chose neutral ground for our meeting, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, distant enough from the glare of media attention. Arriving early, I claimed a secluded corner table, my heartbeat quickening at the mere thought of seeing my father again. The last time we'd spoken, I had been cast out. Now, here he was, coming to me, humbled. Through the cafe window, I saw his familiar figure approach. Even from afar, Robert Sinclair's once imposing presence seemed diminished. His proud shoulders sagged, and a weariness clung to him like a shadow. As he stepped inside, our eyes met briefly. He hesitated at the threshold, visibly uncertain for the first time in my memory. "Mary," he greeted stiffly, sitting down opposite me. His voice lacked its usual authoritative tone, replaced instead by something more fragile, vulnerable. "Dad," I responded softly, my tone carefully neutral. He shifted uncomfortably, eyes fixed on the table between us. "Jonathan said you've agreed to speak with me. Frankly, I wasn't sure you would." I didn't respond immediately, instead observing him carefully. Lines around his eyes had deepened noticeably, etched by stress and sleepless nights. Despite everything, a quiet pang of empathy softened my guarded heart. But empathy alone couldn't erase years of hurt. "What exactly do you expect me to do?" I asked calmly. "And why me? After all you've done?" He sighed heavily, finally raising his eyes to meet mine. "I know what you must think of me. I deserve every ounce of your resentment. But Sinclair Auto is more than just a family company. It employs thousands of people. Innocent families rely on us, Mary. They deserve better than my mistakes." His voice faltered slightly, surprising me. "Jonathan believes, and I reluctantly agree, that you are the only one capable of restoring credibility. Your reputation for sustainability and integrity is exactly what we need." I leaned back in my chair, processing his words. And how do I know this isn't just another way to exploit my success? He looked away briefly, shame coloring his expression. Because this time you hold all the power. The board has already agreed. If you come in as majority shareholder and lead the restructure, I'll step down. The company will be yours to run as you see fit. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to help those who don't deserve punishment for my failures. My breath caught. This was far beyond what I'd anticipated. My father, proud, stubborn, ruthless, offering to surrender control? Yet even as satisfaction briefly flared at the thought, something deeper tugged at my conscience. This wasn't about revenge or dominance. This was about writing a legacy built on deception. What exactly are you suggesting I do? I asked, keeping my voice steady, neutral. Buy the company, Mary, he said bluntly. Take control. Transform it completely. Change its direction, its identity, everything. Sinclair Auto has to disappear entirely. Otherwise, nothing changes. For a long moment, silence filled the space between us. Memories flashed vividly through my mind. Childhood evenings watching my father command meetings with absolute authority. His arrogance defining our family image. Now here he sat, broken, humbled, acknowledging the failure of everything he'd built. How does Mom feel about all this? I asked quietly. He hesitated, glancing down at his clasped hands. She knows it's necessary. Like me, she regrets deeply how we treated you. We both do, even if admitting it publicly comes harder. I drew a deep, steadying breath. This wasn't a decision to make lightly, yet deep within, the answer felt strangely clear. All right, I said finally. I'll do it. But under one condition. This isn't about me saving Sinclair Auto. This will be a new company, a new vision rooted in ethics and sustainability. Sinclair Auto ends here. He nodded slowly, accepting my words with quiet resignation. Whatever it takes. As he left, I remained sitting, my mind racing with possibilities. Over the following weeks, everything moved rapidly. Leveraging my own success, combined with eager foreign investors attracted by my sustainability brand, I successfully acquired majority control of Sinclair Auto. True to my word, I dismantled the old leadership entirely, removing toxic legacies piece by piece. In its place, I launched Sinclair Earth, a brand dedicated exclusively to electric vehicles, sustainable manufacturing practices, and transparent corporate governance. The media eagerly followed the story, calling it a remarkable turnaround, a courageous shift led by the once ostracized daughter. And I did not shield my family from the new reality. They remained involved, but only as regular employees, forced to earn their positions through honest, hard work. My father's office vanished, replaced by a modest workspace beside engineers and designers, people he'd once overlooked. It wasn't easy. Bitterness lingered, conflicts arose, but slowly, respect began replacing resentment. My father, humbled and changed, quietly accepted the lessons that came from starting over. Jonathan found genuine pride in a role earned rather than given. Through it all, I felt myself truly heal. The past no longer defined me. Sinclair Earth became more than a successful company. It symbolized a second chance. Proof that change was possible even from the darkest moments. One evening, standing quietly on the factory floor among the hum of machinery and friendly chatter of employees, I realized with quiet certainty that the decision had been right. I'd reclaimed the Sinclair name not through revenge, but through integrity. And that was victory enough for me. The auditorium hummed softly with whispered conversations and the rustle of programs. Hundreds had gathered beneath the glittering lights, their eyes fixed on the sleek, elegant silhouette of Sinclair Earth's first electric car, draped beneath a silky white cloth on stage. Standing quietly backstage, I listened as my heartbeat echoed the rhythm of anticipation around me. It had been almost a year since I'd taken control. A year of long nights, tough decisions, and relentless determination. But tonight wasn't just about unveiling a product, it was about revealing a new identity, both for Sinclair Earth and myself. 5 minutes, Ms. Sinclair, a gentle voice murmured. I nodded, exhaling softly as my fingers brushed against the small podium beside me, my eyes falling briefly upon the hidden sculpture at the center of the stage, my secret tribute to a past I'd finally laid to rest. The lights dimmed, and I stepped confidently onto the stage. Applause rose gently as the spotlight embraced me. Through the bright haze, I spotted familiar faces, my father, my mother, Jonathan, all sitting quietly in the front row. My father's gaze, once fierce and demanding, now carried an unfamiliar softness. It steadied me. "Good evening," I began clearly, my voice calm yet firm. "Tonight marks the beginning, not simply of a product, but of a new vision. For too long, we believed success meant power, wealth, and dominance at any cost. Sinclair Earth stands here today as proof that integrity and sustainability aren't mere ideals. They are powerful forces for real, lasting success." Applause broke out gently, but I raised a hand, smiling slightly to quiet them. "But tonight isn't just about our cars," I continued, voice softening slightly. "It's about renewal. It's about recognizing the potential in what others discard." I stepped aside, signaling gently as the spotlight moved, illuminating the hidden sculpture at center stage. Gasps of surprise and wonder rippled through the audience. Standing there was a towering sculpture, graceful, symbolic, crafted carefully from ash and fragments. Its edges shimmered softly under the lights, powerful yet fragile. My throat tightened slightly as I explained quietly. "This sculpture is made from the ashes of the inheritance contract I signed, the night my family cast me out. It represents the moment when I lost everything, yet found myself." My father visibly stiffened, eyes widening slightly, a sheen of tears reflecting under the lights. Jonathan lowered his head quietly. My mother pressed a hand gently to her chest, emotion clear in her softened expression. I continued steadily. "It stands here today not as a symbol of bitterness or revenge, but as a reminder of how pain, loss, and rejection can be transformed into something meaningful. Like this sculpture, Sinclair Earth rose from the ashes of what once seemed worthless, proving that our greatest strength often comes from our most broken moments." The room fell silent for a long moment before erupting into powerful applause. Loud, heartfelt, sincere. Tears blurred my own vision slightly, but this time I welcomed them openly, unashamed. As the applause continued, my father slowly stood, his face open, vulnerable, profoundly moved. Our eyes met once more, silently sharing understanding, regret, acceptance. I felt no bitterness, only clarity. I had stepped fully beyond the shadow of the past, not by erasing it, but by confronting it openly. This was my moment of truth, not a moment of triumph over others, but of peace within myself. The silk cloth fell away, revealing our beautiful electric car beneath, sleek lines reflecting the promise of the future. But my gaze lingered not on the polished metal or gleaming design, but instead on the sculpture beside it, quietly triumphant in its humble imperfection. Tonight wasn't just about innovation or success, it was about redemption, honesty, and growth. Tonight, finally, the reception hall gradually emptied, leaving only quiet murmurs and the soft hum of cleaning crews tidying the remnants of celebration. I stood silently near the stage, my eyes fixed thoughtfully upon the ash sculpture, emotions still rippling gently beneath the surface. "Mary?" My father's voice was quiet, tentative, a tone I'd rarely heard before. Turning slowly, I saw him standing a short distance away, his eyes softer than I'd ever known. The usual mask of confidence had vanished completely, replaced by genuine vulnerability. "Dad," I replied gently, allowing the silence between us to deepen before adding quietly, "Thank you for coming tonight." He nodded, eyes dropping momentarily. "Mary, I needed to say..." His voice broke slightly, and he cleared his throat, visibly struggling with words he'd clearly rehearsed yet found nearly impossible now. "I'm sorry, truly, for everything." The simple words, so raw, so honest, nearly brought tears to my eyes. But instead, I steadied my breath, holding his gaze steadily. "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't know how long I've waited to hear those words. Not because I wanted you to suffer, but because I needed you to understand." "I understand now," he said softly, looking carefully at me. "When you stood on that stage tonight, I finally saw you, the real you, Mary. Not who I wanted you to be, not the image I created, but who you've always been. I was blind and cruel and wrong." He glanced away, voice quieter now, heavy with regret. "When we cast you out, I believed I was teaching you strength, resilience, and what success meant. Instead, you were the one teaching us. You built something true and good, not because of us, but despite us." His honesty was disarming, deeply affecting me. I stepped closer, hesitating briefly before placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Dad, I've learned something important too. I thought for years that forgiveness meant erasing the past, pretending pain never existed. But it doesn't." I paused, allowing my own truth to surface clearly. Forgiveness is choosing to move forward despite what happened. It's seeing people as flawed and human, not perfect, but capable of change. He looked at me earnestly, tears shimmering faintly in his eyes. "Mary, I never imagined you'd give me that chance." I shook my head softly. "I'm not doing it for you, Dad. I'm doing it for myself. Holding on to anger only kept me imprisoned by your mistakes. I'm choosing to forgive, but I'll never forget. I can't." He nodded slowly, absorbing my words carefully. "I wouldn't expect you to, but maybe someday I can show you I've truly changed." "I hope so," I whispered, sincerity clear in my voice. Behind him, my mother and Jonathan approached quietly, hesitation marking their steps. Jonathan spoke first, his voice steady yet cautious. "Mary, tonight was powerful. Thank you for giving us a chance, even after everything." My mother stepped forward, her eyes gentle, contrite. "Mary," she murmured softly, "I've missed you so much, not just as my daughter, but as the brave, honest woman you've become." Quiet tears finally slipped down my cheeks, warm and cleansing. For years, I'd imagined this moment filled with righteous triumph or bitter rejection. But now, facing my family in sincere vulnerability, I realized what I truly wanted had always been simpler: understanding, honesty, and respect. We stood quietly together for a long moment, the past heavy between us but finally losing its grip. Eventually, my father gently cleared his throat, his voice soft, hopeful. "Perhaps we can start over, not as the Sinclairs we once were, but as the people we're trying to become." I smiled softly, relief blooming warmly within me. "Yes, I'd like that." In that quiet hall, beneath the glow of dimmed lights and surrounded by echoes of past hurt finally fading, we began to heal, not by forgetting, but by acknowledging. Not by ignoring pain, but by facing it head on. For the first time, I understood forgiveness not as weakness, but as my greatest strength. Months passed gently, each day bringing its own quiet rhythms of change. My life settled into something calm, purposeful, and profoundly meaningful. Sinclair Earth flourished, becoming not merely successful financially, but also a symbol of genuine change, a beacon of hope for sustainability and integrity within an industry once marred by corruption. But deeper still was the quiet revolution taking place within me. Forgiving my family hadn't magically erased the scars they'd left behind, nor had it made the past suddenly irrelevant. Instead, forgiveness had given me clarity, allowing me to move forward without the burden of bitterness. On a mild spring afternoon, I stood at the center of my expanded workshop, sunlight filtering through large, clean windows. Around me, a gentle hum of work filled the air, designers sketching new ideas, artisans carefully polishing reclaimed wood, the soft laughter of people who genuinely loved what they did. This wasn't just a workplace. It had become a community, a a family of its own kind, built on shared passion and mutual respect. As I walked through the workspace, smiling warmly at familiar faces, my thoughts drifted gently back to the girl I had once been, a daughter desperately chasing validation, crushed beneath the weight of impossible expectations. I wondered what she'd think if she could see me now, confident yet humble, successful not by society's rigid standards but by measures I'd finally defined for myself. Toward evening, as the workshop quieted, I lingered at the workbench alone. My fingers traced the grain of a recently completed chair crafted carefully from materials that others had discarded, transformed by patient hands into something remarkable. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. "Hey, Mary," a familiar voice gently interrupted my thoughts. Turning, I saw Jonathan approaching, sleeves rolled up, sawdust lightly dusting his shirt. Since joining Sinclair Earth, he had changed remarkably, no longer burdened by entitlement, instead quietly proud of the honest work he contributed daily. "Jonathan?" I greeted warmly. "Still here?" "Just finishing up," he replied, smiling softly. He hesitated a moment before adding sincerely, "I just wanted to thank you, not just for the opportunity, but for showing me there's a different way to live." My heart tightened gently, gratitude and affection blending quietly. "Jonathan, you've done this yourself. I just opened the door. You chose to walk through it." He nodded slowly, thoughtful, before softly admitting, "All my life, success meant something else entirely. Money, power, reputation. Now it's something simpler. Purpose, honesty, real connections." I smiled, deeply moved by his sincerity. "Exactly," I whispered. "That's what I learned too." Later that night, alone in my quiet apartment, I reflected carefully upon everything I'd experienced. Success had changed dramatically from what I once believed it had to be. It wasn't measured by external validation or financial wealth, nor was it about proving others wrong. Real success was quieter, simpler, more profound. It was the courage to define yourself honestly, to follow your path despite opposition, and to create something meaningful from adversity. It was facing pain without bitterness, offering forgiveness without forgetting. Standing by the window, I gazed gently at the stars scattered across the dark sky, their quiet glow illuminating my thoughts. My family's betrayal had broken me down, but from that brokenness had emerged a strength I'd never imagined possible. I had reclaimed my story, transforming pain into purpose, loss into beauty. Yes, forgiveness had freed me, not by erasing past wounds, but by allowing me to heal and grow beyond them. Smiling quietly to myself, I understood clearly now the message my life carried. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing freedom over bitterness. And success isn't what others say it is, it's having the courage to define it for yourself. In the peaceful stillness of that moment, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be, finally and beautifully whole.